Manufacturing and industrial environments provide their own unique challenges for wireless communications. Harsh conditions, both indoors and out, create a daunting task for engineers to work through. This is where we come to discuss those challenges, share ideas, and help one another out. My name is Scott McNeil, and welcome to the Industrial Wi-Fi Shop. Welcome, everyone, to yet another episode of the Industrial Wi-Fi Shop. My name is Scott McNeil. Color commentary by Jeremy Baker. How are you today, Jeremy?
I'm doing well. Thank you for asking.
He's a man of many words. That's why he got hired. Today is going to be a lot of fun. We've got Heath Weeks, and Heath, a big part of his job is wireless in the steel mill that he works at. They produce a variety of steel products, and so it's going to be a lot of fun today as we go through the trials and tribulations and adventures that he has there. But before we meet Heath, I want to talk about my CWISA Guide Giveaway. I have 2 copies of the Certified Wireless IoT Solution Administrator Guide from CWNA, the Certified Wireless Network Professional, CWNP, sorry. And the winners have been drawn. I have one winner from the realm of IT, and I have one winner from the realm of OT. Our winner from IT, and pardon me if I mispronounce your name, but I think it's Hiten Thakkar, or how would you pronounce that, Jeremy?
My guess would be Hiten Thakkar,
Hiten Thakkar
but that's probably
from
not it
Santa
either.
Cruz, California. Dude, thanks for entering. I have your email address. I will get up with you about shipping and get this book to you. Our OT winner is Jace Allen from Kaysville, Utah, the thriving metropolis of out there in the desert. Congratulations, gentlemen. Again, I have your email addresses, and I will be reaching out for shipping information for these books.
And I have a note here to just point out that there was a little bit of West Coast bias in the random selection.
Well, I'll look into that. The election committee was my 13-year-old daughter drawing names from a hat, so I'll have to see if this process was compromised.
Well, we're not going to question those results.
So, like I said, today with us we have Heath Weeks. Heath, how are you today, sir?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you for having me.
Hey, man. No, I'm happy to have you on the show. It's always interesting to talk to people who work in industrial environments and see what their experiences are. So, before we really dive in, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you came to be where you are doing what you do?
Yeah, I'm Heath Weeks. I work at the Gerdau Special Steel facility in Fort Smith, Arkansas, as an infrastructure analyst now. Started out as a PC tech and then worked my way through and up from there. So now I help a small team of infrastructure guys run our division of Gerdau here and in Michigan and Indiana.
So, you
So
cover multiple sites. It's not just the site where you live.
yeah, multiple sites. We're always working on all the other sites. So keeps it nice and interesting trying to troubleshoot and plan for remote systems.
Well, that's awesome. So let's just dive right in. I want to hear more about the overall environment, outside of the office spaces, down on the factory floor, as it were. What are the extremes that you have to deal with on a day-to-day basis?
The extremes that come with the steel industry are mainly you're going to have a lot of heat, you're going to have a lot of dust, a lot of moving parts, as you guys are fully aware of in the industrial setting. In Arkansas specifically, you have extreme heat and humidity depending on the season. It it can get quite hot and humid here. Feels like you're, swimming as you're walking through the mill. And so that makes things nice and interesting. And then you have a lot of large moving pieces that you have to watch out for. I'll have an example story for you later on that. As in any area, you have the human element, which, can complicate things.
Absolutely.
And when you have human element moving very large things, it can get fun.
So you talk about dust being at this a steel mill. I'm assuming that that's metallic dust.
Yeah, there's a lot of metallic dust from the melting process and from the grinding of the bars and everything. In some areas, it's very metallic, and some it's more just dirt because the doors are open all the time, equipment coming in and out. So we get a mixture of it all.
Have you noticed the dust itself causing any sort of transmission errors with the RF just in general?
I
Um,
I have found whenever some of the access points that are on the melt shop floor in that area, if they get covered with dust, the antennas get covered with dust, and it's that metallic dust, then they will start to drop the signal strength that you can get from them. I haven't scientifically proven that. I need to now, but uh, it's one of those things that you start getting complaints in the area, go and clean the equipment off, and complaints go away.
Yeah. Is that part of your like PM schedule too, or
It really should be. These things called schedules. I can barely remember what day it is sometimes.
yeah, that's one of those squeaky wheel gets the grease
Yeah.
kind of things. We've seen stuff like that too in AGVs with the like the proc sensors and like gypsum plants will get dusty and then they'll start throwing a bunch of errors and they're supposed to dust it every day, but you know how that is. There's like a million things that pop up more important than that.
and I see it. I see similar issues out in wood yards for paper mills. Just it just piles up after so much, and it just starts absorbing so much of the RF that the transmission just goes down, and all of a sudden their connection is crap, and they don't understand why. But then when you go and you check out the AP, and it's got like a foot of wood dust, caked all on it. That's now granted, I would imagine metallic dust would have more of an effect than wood dust, but I guess it all depends on how much you let pile up on it before you go
Mhm.
clean it. And, I forget because every time that I'm out in Arkansas, I forget how humid it does get out there. Because every time I'm sitting out there, it's always in the middle of the summer, and I'm surprised. I live on the coast, so I'm used to humidity, but Arkansas is pretty far inland, and it's amazing at how humid it gets out there. Do you typically have negative effects with that much humidity out there?
Not not with most of my wireless equipment that I've noticed at least.
I was just curious. Coastal, it's not only humidity, but it's the salt air you have to worry about because the salt starts eating everything up. So it puts a little bit of a different spin on it. And some of
Do
these
you
mills that I go to are literally right on the coast. They're on the intercoastal waterway, or some are actually on barrier islands, believe it or not. So I mean, salt air is a real thing, and when you're looking at the steel infrastructure of a wood yard or a tank farm, and realize it does not take long for these things to start just rusting out.
Yeah, one of our locations in Monroe is right on the lake, and everything rusts so quickly there. Mounts can fail because of the rust and all of that.
We've had cases of conduit containing fiber rusting through, and then the conduit breaking, and the actual jacketed fiber is what's holding the conduit in place. That was pretty awesome.
I've been to when I was in Hong Kong for a project, they had problems where they couldn't pull fresh cable and stuff through the conduit because it was all filled with mud. So it's like that I mean that that and then the very scary bamboo scaffolding, which I'm too big to get on.
Bamboo's crazy, man. That stuff's super invasive. Well, let's do this. When you're out in the field, do you have any specific tool sets that you run with for troubleshooting?
I do. I started out with the old Fluke, the air check, the original
Okay.
one. That's what got my feet wet, and then quickly realized it has a lot of limitations. So jumped on the Ekahau wagon, got the Sidekick. Been rolling with it ever since, and now the Sidekick too, which is for what I do, it's fantastic. It's easy to use. Can use your iPad and everything for it now, so it makes it a whole lot easier to get out there and and things are constantly changing in the environment. We're constantly adding new areas that need wireless. We're currently doing a lot of industry 4.0 type stuff, trying to get more digital. So that means more mobility, more devices in the hands of everyone. And they need connectivity everywhere they work, which you've been in industrial areas. There are nooks and crannies everywhere.
Everywhere.
So they need access in those areas. And so the Sidekick and EchoHow software has made it easy to get down there, get a map, put a survey together to see what we're working with, what kind of interference we have in that area, um, and then put a plan together of what APs need to go where and to get the coverage we need for that full mobility and being able to roam all throughout the location, inside and outside. So I use the Sidekick quite often. And
Do you run across a lot of RF interference just from machinery and whatnot?
yeah, there's a good amount in that kind of environment. We have electric arc furnaces, which put out a whole lot of interference um, that I've seen on the 2.4 gig spectrum on the lower end of it. So that makes it interesting in that area. Trying to get away from 2.4 as much as possible, so that won't be as big of an issue. But steel industry a lot of times stays behind in the technology, so there's a lot of equipment we have that's never going to get off 2.4. So we just have
Yeah,
to
that's
work
that's
around it.
kind of uh heavy industry in general. At most places I've been, and you'll see it everywhere when you start researching the subject. In general, heavy industry is 10 to 15 years behind in current technology because of what's involved in the upgrade, because it's not just the cost of the equipment, it's the cost of downtime to replace it all. And then there's no guarantees it's going to work any better than what you currently have. So especially when you look at engineers who have been there 15, 20 years and they're at the points in their career, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, you know? So they don't want you messing with things because they know what they have works. But when you were running into situations like your arc furnaces and, they kick out a bunch of interference in 2.4, but you have a ton of legacy devices that rely on that 2.4, what kind of choice do you have? And then on the
Exactly.
flip side of that, when you're looking at using higher frequencies, but you're in an environment that actually produces reflective material, the higher your frequency, the more data throughput you get and the more power you have to add to that. But conversely, the less penetrative values you have and the more reflection you get out of those signals. So all that being said, are you guys even looking at Wi-Fi 6E and moving into 6 gigahertz?
I think we're a long ways away from 6 gigahertz as far as in the mill and external areas. We've got some 6 gig running in our main office area. That's already been swapped over to new technology. But outside of that, we're not planning on using 6 gig anywhere else.
Well, 6 and 5 are really pretty similar in their values, but I get having to stay away from 2.4 as much as you can. I see a ton of interference, especially just from it, even from unshielded drives in those frequencies. It's crazy. Do you guys have any specific like remote support tools that you use? You had mentioned the air check,
Mhm.
and the air check has evolved quite a bit. I have a cyberscope and I love it. It has come a long, long way from the original, Fluke air check. I believe Net Ally's done a really good job with it. One of the cool things with those is that through your online account, you can actually grant remote access to those devices if they're connected, so that someone else can see what you're seeing down on the floor. It's really slick how they did that with their live link accounts. Do you guys have any sort of remote special tools that you utilize, or is that something you're looking at or have yet to move to?
We haven't moved to that yet. A lot of it ends up being myself or one of the infrastructure guys goes out there to check it out.
You are the
Um,
remote tool.
yeah, pretty
Not that I'm
much.
calling you a tool. I just let me go and clarify that.
Yeah, it's luckily our company is pretty good about letting us travel to these places to troubleshoot and fix issues that we can't check remotely. So I spend a good amount of time going back and forth between locations to upgrade and to troubleshoot specific areas that we can't figure out from remote. We don't use very many remote tools when it comes to wireless and all. We've got some of the Wi-Fi Explorer action going on with some of my remote people, so they can actually see what's in the air at least and give
Okay.
that kind of information to give me a better idea of what I'm looking at.
Have
Um,
you have you leveraged any of the stuff like the WLAN-PI as a remote sensor or any of that stuff?
that's on my list to hopefully get approved to purchase this year. Um, was not able to last year, so that's a tool that I definitely want to get in the hands of my remote people, the field support guys that are actually out there at all these sites, so we can get that data real time.
There's
Yeah.
other options too, like 7Signal and Ybot. I've used some of Ybot stuff. I like that a lot. It's pretty comprehensive. Um, but it's amazing how much those remote sensors can give you, even with the Wyland Pi, like Jeremy was talking about. So do you, I'm assuming then from your site, you can log into and see all of your APs at the locals, at the various other local sites.
Yeah, we have a centralized controller right now with our Extreme setup, so we can get to all the APs and see what they're seeing at least. So without being on site, we can still see what's in the air around them and what's going on in the logs and everything.
I haven't used Extreme. Do they have the ability to like interchange AP roles to like turn it from an AP to like a monitoring AP as opposed to a client AP?
The newer stuff, yes. The the antiques we're using currently, not quite.
Well, that was one of the questions I wanted to ask you was what you guys used out there. So you guys are an Extreme shop.
We're in Extreme Shop currently. We've migrated from using the old Motorola and Zebra access points and setup, and then through acquisitions and all that, we're on Extreme now.
Okay.
The last upgrade we did, we stuck with Extreme because it's what we knew. We knew it worked. It worked well. Um, we have we have mesh set up out in our yard areas for our fork trucks and forklifts and scrap cranes and all that go around to load stuff. So we have to have connectivity everywhere. So we've got mesh in areas that we couldn't get cabling, which worked great on the older Extreme stuff. Newer Extreme stuff, we had issue after issue and actually had to send some of our newer stuff back to get an older model just to make the mesh work, which was not ideal. But that was after like 5 months of troubleshooting with the firmware programmers and all this, and it was a whole ordeal. So we had to downgrade slightly to get the mesh to work with Extreme. So we've had issues. It's worked great in some areas. We've had issues in other areas, and we're finally moving to a more user-friendly and admin-friendly setup, uh, going to Juniper for all of our sites.
Oh, well, that's going to be a crazy transition right there.
Yeah, the
Uh,
amount of problems that just swapping from the old hardware we had at our office location to the new Juniper Mist APs, the amount of problems that were solved just by swapping out the APs was mind-blowing. And it made me look fantastic, which was great.
well, I mean, as long as you look good, that's the important thing, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, so
Um,
it was my suggestion to pick this new hardware.
well, hey man, it's all or nothing, right? All in for the win.
But that's a good, Scott, that's a good point, kind of going back to that 2.4 discussion is that, not only is it, if you have coverage that you depend on for 2.4, you've got the propagation distance that changes, but also it's like you put a new device in there and sometimes that stuff does, it just does weird stuff. I know like sometimes the Cisco stuff in AGVs, it doesn't handle the, oh God, why am I blanking on this? The passive, it's like passive client issues. And so a bunch of vehicles would have to be, if it was a Cisco system, typically you'd have to like convert the clients over to NAT to resolve some of those issues, but you wouldn't see it in some of the other vendors. But it's like you've got network drops in certain places, you got to run conduit and stuff out there. And so that's one kind of difficulty, but just putting a new device in somewhere the firmwares are kind of different. I mean, we've seen that kind of with with Siemens where it's, and kind of when we're talking about ProSoft, right? Like the chip level access and stuff like that.
Mhm.
Like some of the IPCF stuff it's kind of completely different too in the newer radios.
Yeah, with the chip differences alone can change a lot of the game. Heath, last episode we talked with Vic Perangelo from ProSoft, and one of the things that made their magic happen was the fact that they have low level chip access in order to change how it processes things. It's interesting though, with the Wi-Fi 6 stuff, they don't have that access, so they've got to, and so they're getting better transitioning out of older gear. So it's interesting that paradox is there, and that you still don't have access to new stuff. It's kind of confusing to see why you would want to upgrade certain things if you're not going to get the performance out of it. But I guess my point is everybody handles stuff differently on the back end. So as you transition over to, Juniper Mist as an example, it'll be interesting to see what issues go away because of how everything's handled on the back end versus any sort of new issues that may arise because, again, how they handle stuff on the back end.
And then there's also with their acquisition or merger with Aruba, then it's, is there going to be any kind of headaches with that where they kind of cut off features or they stop? There's some mechanism where they choose like an internal Aruba processor code set or something to run that hardware versus what they've already developed. And kind of vice versa for them.
Juniper doesn't do on-prem controllers, correct? They're all cloud.
All cloud.
Now, does that give you any issues security wise? Have there been any questions on that?
No, no questions on it because it's all controlled. Haven't had any security issues with it, and it's been amazing because I can actually administer the network from anywhere now, not having to be on a computer with an old Java program wrapper to hit my extreme controller.
You just use your flame resistant pajamas at home.
Yeah, exactly.
Who doesn't have FR pajamas? I'm just saying, everybody's got to have a good set of FR pajamas.
Great for the winter.
Well, and you never know when you're going to have to go into an arc flash area, right? So,
So do you use any sort of like proprietary protocols anywhere in the plant?
Nothing wide yet. We've got some vibration sensors that use the BLE connection
okay.
back to gateways, and then the gateways are on my wireless network if they can't be wired in. But that's the only really proprietary type stuff that's not really. We're moving more to that area, getting into remote sensors and everything, and so we do need to look at doing some kind of a more industrial Wi-Fi setup so they're not piggybacking off the industrial or off the enterprise. Sorry.
Yeah. Bluetooth or BLE rather, that is a great medium specifically for preventive maintenance sensors, vibration, temperature, humidity, all that stuff. But the issue you do run across with a lot of those is the fact they're in 2.4. Now granted, it's spread spectrum and it's got all kinds of interference mitigation built into the protocol. But when your interference is just destroying the first half of 2.4, it's just destroying the first half of 2.4. There's nothing you can do about it. But yeah, so there's a lot of technologies out there, but so many of them are based in 2.4. When you look at a lot of these technologies that are 802.15.4 technologies, the vast majority of them 2.4. But when the chipsets are that cheap, it's hard to say no, I'm not going to build in that frequency range. But I'm a big fan of 900 megahertz myself. For years people say 900 megahertz not even worth it anymore. There's so many uses for 900 megahertz out there, especially when you look at environments like yours, because it's not near as susceptible to the reflection, refraction, diffraction that the higher frequencies are. Now, granted, your data rate's much lower, but if you're talking about sensor feeds, who cares? Sensor feeds only require 100K. It's no big deal.
Yeah, there
But
was
I'll get off that soapbox. Me and I need to get a 900 megahertz superhero T-shirt. Is what I need to do.
Well,
there was
Scott, this
a
will make. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Jeremy, do you remember at WLPC, there was a presentation about, was it the Halo?
Halo, yeah.
That was
Yep.
super interesting that I'd honestly never heard of.
Wi-Fi Halo.
Yes.
Yeah, Wi-Fi over 900 megahertz. It's using the Wi-Fi protocols just over a different frequency. You don't get as much bandwidth, but the distance and penetration values you get out of it are incredible. There is a manufacturer of industrial radios, Esteem, and they have a series of 900 megahertz radios. And now, granted, they have a little kind of a secret sauce twist to it, but they also do data bridging. And I have deployed several sets of those, and one of which was getting about 20 meg worth of throughput, crushing through about a mile of dense forest and underbrush for the back gate of a mill where they intake all of their trucks to come in for raw materials. And when that station's down and they can't register trucks, the trucks will line up for like a mile or two down the road and block traffic. And they would get fined by the highway patrol for the traffic that they were blocking. But they could not, quote unquote, justify the expense of running fiber out there for $120,000. But their IT department couldn't get any other wireless to work. They were all at a Cisco shop, and they refused to do anything else but what they had on their shelves. And finally got somebody to sign off on a one-off, and they let me put in these 900 megahertz data radios, and they've been off and running ever since and haven't had a single problem. Their IT couldn't fix it for 2 years. I fixed it in 20 minutes. So,
Nice.
but that just shows you the utility of 900 megahertz, though a little more niche than it used to be, is definitely there.
That's something that I'm looking at for I did that. The Hominus got that cool feature where you can use the WLAMPI as your capture point.
Yeah.
And I put the external antennas on it, and I was doing some overhead survey in some machine cells. And so I was looking at that Halo or like LoRaWAN as possibly doing like a backhaul for that, because I don't know if it's like this for you guys, Heath, but in like auto manufacturing or entertainment, you got to be real careful about stepping on stuff, because similar to that $20,000 a day fine for backed up traffic. You shut a line down or something, and heaven forbid you damage a vehicle, and they've got to come in and physically remove it from the line. So I was looking at that as that might be an interesting backhaul option to kind of provide that data connectivity to the sensor, because there's not really a ton of stuff running 900 megahertz.
Well, and I don't think LoRaWAN is really designed for backhaul stuff. It's more designed for burst communication with sensors and whatnot. But that doesn't mean that there's not other items out there to do backhaul specifically with. And
Yeah. Well, this is just like a,
to your
connection
the
to
whole
an
point of
iPad
all
or
of this
something.
is that's exactly what Wi-Fi Halo would be for.
Yeah.
That would be a textbook case, if you ask me, for Wi-Fi Halo.
So now I just gotta buy some radios and make it work.
Well, I mean, you can do that with pies, can't you? Can you do Halo over pies?
Yeah, you just have to get the hats. But that's I've been pestering our buddy Mark Couts about his use of it. I think it's promising. I'm really excited to try it out.
Has Mark been already playing with
He's
Halo?
done some Halo testing,
Okay.
and then the talk was by was it Troy Martin?
Martin. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
that guy's crazy smart.
That's what I
and
love
he li-
about
and he
podcasts
likes
like this.
bicycles.
We went to WLPC. That's where I met Jeremy. You find these different technologies that you've never heard of before. And then in talking, hearing Troy talk about them, hearing you guys talk about them, you start to think, oh, wait, I have an exact use case this could be useful for.
Right.
And Heath, you might like that. Some of the sensors and stuff. That lattice focus. I don't know if you've seen that, but it's was it Heavy Wireless? Keith Parsons had the person on for that, and that's basically just like kind of like a little box, like a little like small pizza box sized device that takes any. I think it's limited in frequency, but it basically like just takes the signal and kind of amplifies it. There's sort of smarts in it, right? But it just kind of like my understanding is that it like is like kind of like a stenographer, but it kind of just not doubles or triples or whatever, but it amplifies the signal. And they were saying the use cases like for some of those like IoT sensors, the AP can talk as loud as it wants under power, but then that battery powered device has to also balance. I need to stay alive for a period of time. So it's just really awesome, like seeing stuff like that and trying to figure out like how you can apply it in unique problems that you have.
Yeah, sadly, I have yet to be able to go to a double WLPC, but I got to try to make it happen. Between projects and family life, it's pretty difficult to escape for the fun stuff. The CWNP Wireless IoT Track is the only certification program available that not only covers wireless IoT protocols in common use, but IoT as a technology and solution that is revolutionizing industry and business at the same time. When you work through the IoT track, you learn the protocols, the devices, the data, and the applications that bring the true value IoT has to offer. And for those with the tenacity to persevere, the world's elite IoT certification completes the process and the certified wireless IoT solutions expert credentials. If you want to be in the cutting edge of what's happening in technology, you won't find a better certification program for the Internet of Things.
My wife was very nice and let me go for a fun trip versus a work trip.
And WLPC, quick plug there. It is very much a fun trip. You learn more than you can possibly keep.
Yeah, absolutely.
If your mind is a sponge, you go to WLPC and that sponge is overloaded. But you're thinking about it for months afterwards, even a year afterwards, about all the stuff you learned, and then you learn tidbits of it, pieces of it, and then you go back and learn more, and it really sets you up to excel in what you're doing. And you meet the
Yeah,
people that can help you get to those points.
I feel
Make
the same about the Slack groups too. It's like, and it's cool because sometimes you feel like you're out on an island and this stuff, and it's like you see that there's like hundreds of people that are in, in similar kind of avenues, and it's pretty awesome.
And that's one of the nice things, like Ali has been working on getting Wyco up and running here stateside. It's I don't know how much you guys have seen that they've been doing over in Europe, but I mean they're so big now that their Wycos are like 2 days, 2 day events, and they're starting to borderline full conferences. But we've had several successful YCO events here stateside. And I got to we had one just outside of Raleigh, North Carolina, and I got to do a 2 hour hands-on lab that I presented to the group, and everyone got a chance to wire up industrial APs, to 24-volt power supplies and get them configured and understand some of the different modes on how all they worked. And these are all like our Wi-Fi brethren from the enterprise universe, so they've never been exposed to any of it. And it was a lot of fun. And with any luck, if not this WLPC, but maybe next, I'm going to try to do some kind of deep dive to where it's a full like lab experience, so all of our enterprise Wi-Fi brethren can get a taste of this different equipment and how it works and how it handles and what it's used for.
Ooh, sign me up, Scott.
I'll
Did
keep that in
anybody let
mind. I was hanging out with Keith Parsons on Heavy Wireless, and he was asking me about it, and I was like, I didn't get a chance to get into a full answer there, but I'm working with some of my contacts at some other vendors to see what I can try and pull together, and it may end up being too late this time for the coming up Phoenix WLPC, but possibly the next one. And if I start getting really positive feedback on the people will attend and want to have fun with it, that's just more of a driving force. And I'll start talking with my boss about possibly being a part sponsor on that too.
So Scott, when you did your deep dive, did anybody let the magic smoke out of the power supply?
Nobody let the smoke out. They were afraid to. We had that conversation, but I said before anybody plugs anything in, I'll double check their wiring just to make sure. Because
I'm
all this lab gear is mine. I personally own it, so the last thing I need to do is people smoking my power supplies.
I did that about 2 feet from where I'm sitting right now. Because I read the pin out on the connector backwards. It's like, whoops.
I have several that have dead written on them in very large Sharpie.
Yeah.
So let's circle back around to Heath since we kind of got off on a tangent. I really want to, when you're walking around your site, what are some of the more challenging issues that you've had to deal with? And rumor has it that you've had equipment actually melt on you. I really want to hear that story.
Yeah, that's a fun one. That's my little science experiment that's still going on. We put up new APs in my rolling mill area, which is bars. Just a little overview. Bars come out of the melt shop and the caster. They're put into the bar shape, billet shape from the caster. They go through the rolling mill, which basically squeezes them down to size. Then they go through a saw that cuts them down to size. And then they go to a cooling bed. And in my design, I slightly missed an environmental variable on that, and I had an access point mounted about 30 feet from the cooling bed, uh, which that's the type of things you should design around, of course, because the operating temperatures of these APs is not rated for that kind of temperature.
When you
Um,
say that kind of temperature, what are we talking about?
oh, we're talking about bars that are 800 to 1,000 degrees, I'd say.
Yeah,
Uh,
so a quick check on white papers for these devices. I don't ever see anything over like 140 or 150, 160 degrees
yeah, we put that to the
Fahrenheit.
extreme. So this setup here where it's mounted, again, bad design on my part years ago, but since then it's been an experiment to see how long it will last. This AP, and it's an Exceltex antenna, is still operating full signal in that area. The antenna is melted. The plastic covering on it is melted completely. So you can see the inner workings of the antenna. The AP is starting to melt. The outside case of it is starting to melt. Um, but it's still trucking along. And so at this point, it's even whenever I replace that area with new equipment, I might just leave that AP up just to see how long it lasts. We're sitting at like 5 years now that it has been
Wow,
melted,
5 years.
still operating correctly.
You sent me a picture of it. I'm going to post this picture in the show notes. You guys have got to see this. That's a really shriveled up, melted, and it looks kind of like candy corn at this point. It's kind of got that candy corn coloration to it.
It's something you don't see very often, for sure.
It
No,
looks
that's why
like
I was
it
so
looks like it
interested.
touched the Ark of the Covenant at the end of Indiana Jones.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive. I mean, you can see where the cover of the AP, of the box that it's in, is starting to melt itself. But who builds an AP to withstand 1,000 degrees from a steel mill? I mean, that's crazy.
Yeah, and we have some that are in our caster area. So we're in a big metal building, of course, and the caster level is at the very top of that building. So it's the floor, it's the 58-foot floor. So up there above the heads of these guys that are working on the caster is a ladle of steel that could be over 2,000 degrees. And then you've got the sun of the Arkansas heat. So the ambient temperatures on that floor can be well over 130, 140. And I've got APs up there that are operating temperature range that they should be operating in, and they're still going strong. So we like to push the limits.
Hey, here's the side note. How good do those electrolyte popsicles taste when you've been out there?
Hey, we've got squincher popsicles that are
Yeah.
Squinchers,
beautiful.
yes.
We keep them in our fridge there in the admin building where our office is. We've got a big thing at our mills, obviously, is safety. So we have got water stations everywhere. and the squincher packets to put in the water for more electrolytes. We've got the squincher pops everywhere. Yeah, they're a
Yeah,
much
man.
needed necessity.
Those
Squincher,
man,
that's
those
the otter pops of the industrial world, man.
dude, those things hit, man. I'm telling you,
Oh, you've been
Brush
running
them up
around
a
a
little
wood
bit.
yard all
Oh, they're
day
beautiful.
and it's 1,000 degrees outside and you hit it, man, those things hit different when it's super hot outside.
yeah. You need to get one of those like the ice cream truck sounds and just have it like playing quietly by the.
That's awesome. Got any other cool science projects?
Found out from a real world experience that metal building paint will kill your signal quite quickly. There was an outfit that was painting the exterior of our buildings, and I got reports from my scrap crane operators, which have computers on the scrap cranes to deal with the recipes of scrap they're putting in the buckets. I got reports from them that their signal is just gone. They have no signal in a certain area. So of course I go out there with my handy sidekick and I'm pulling readings. I'm looking to see what all's going on, what kind of signal strength we have, and if it's interference, if it's something else in the environment that's causing it. And I'm just confused for a couple hours. Then I finally look up on the building and I see the AP and antenna is completely a different color. They had painted over it with some thick exterior paint, and there was no signal whatsoever coming out of that access point. So I had to end up replacing the access point and antenna because there was no saving that one.
Why would they paint the AP? Were they just spraying out the whole wall?
They were just spraying. I've got one right now that isn't not online, and we went and looked at it and figured out that it was sprayed with a power washer. I'm all about clean APs, and you got to get the dust off of them sometimes, but power washing is probably not the best option for that.
No, I
That's definitely
mean,
not a way to get clean channels.
Yeah. We have
today's dad joke sponsored by Jeremy Baker.
Couldn't resist.
Well, I mean, that's one way to test your IP66 rating.
this one definitely failed.
So sad.
We've got I mean, I can't really say much about it, but we've got some Arcoax right now that was pretty seriously damaged by a construction crew coming on behind them and or not behind them, but they built some like platforming or like structure around it, and there's like power nail holes through the Arcoax, and it's like how did you do that?
We'll have operators give us reports of wireless being down in an area that they're driving their forklifts where they carry the bundles of steel around. And we ask them if anything has changed in the environment. And obviously nothing has changed in the environment. And then we go out there and we figure out that they knocked the pole down that the access point was
Mhm.
mounted to.
You're like, yeah, did you check the forks of your truck to see if the AP's hanging off of that?
They were trying to take wireless to another level. Wireless.
Wireless. Wireless is so wireless that you don't even need wireless.
There we go.
I guess
So
that's what they were trying to invent.
it keeps everything interesting because there's always something new going on. In ways, I'm jealous of you guys that get to go to all these different areas and see new challenges and new solutions and all. But at the same time, I like knowing my environment and still getting surprised and confused about how things get the way they do and how to fix them and how to work around certain issues.
Well, there's definitely pros and cons to both positions. That's for sure. Well, speaking of new stuff, are there any newer technologies that you guys are looking into specifically? I mean, I know you touched on that you're starting to look at some sensors and whatnot. Anything specific other than some of the BLE preventive maintenance stuff?
Yeah, we're actually starting to work on some hybrid 5G type setups. We have forklifts and jockey trucks that go all over the yard outside where they load the steel up. They have to scan in the steel because we track it from when it's in the scrap. all the way till it's out the door, going to the customer. We keep tracking on where it's at, what processes it's going through. So it has to be scanned in at all of our locations, and every time a bundle is moved, it has to be scanned. So we have mobile scanners that work great in some areas, but when you have laydown yards the size of ours, it's hard to get wireless coverage over every inch of those yards. And you add in, they're going on both sides of the forklift, so you're getting some interference there and some obstruction there. Not to mention all the bars down there, which obviously is a reflective surface. So we have issues getting the best Wi-Fi coverage for the mobile scanners. So we're going to a 5G setup, an MPN setup, to where we can get these scan guns using the 5G network back into our system securely, of course. So we're trying out that hybrid setup now to see how it's working, how it's going to work, and if it can bridge the gap of wireless dead zones that we have.
What vendor are you guys using for that?
We're going through Verizon for that.
Verizon, okay.
Yeah.
So are they going to put an on-prem device and keep it local, or is it full on cellular out through their systems?
It's cellular through their systems. We looked into the private 5G, going that route, which takes more equipment and setup and costs and all that. So that isn't we're not passing on that yet. We're still researching it, trying to figure it out, because if we go that route, it'll be internal as well, which we can't do with the current private network.
Not that it's because it's out in the yard and it's for tracking, it's not exactly mission critical for the actual process. But have you noticed what kind of latency you're getting through the cellular when you're scanning in, and how long it takes to then populate back in the back end systems?
I haven't noticed any kind of latency issues with it. The way we currently do it is cell signal and then a VPN back into our system,
Uh-huh.
and haven't had any issues with the type of scanning that we're doing. It shows up immediately. They haven't had any issues with locations being wrong or
So your devices on the fork trucks are actually VPNing back into the system?
yeah.
Okay. That's interesting.
So are the scan guns cellular capable, or do you have kind of a cellular client on the fork truck, and then like a piggybacked wireless, like small like LAN coming off of it?
The scan guns they have SIM cards in them. They're cell capable. And then down the road,
I didn't know that was a thing. Cellular actual scan guns.
Mhm.
That's interesting. Learn something new every day. I had in my mind thinking some kind of box that was connected back, and then the scan guns were either Bluetooth to it or hardline to it. But the actual scanners themselves, that's got to be a hefty scanner.
Not too much bigger than a cell phone. Runs an
Okay.
Android operating system. And we've got some that are a little bit bigger right now than your normal cell phone, just because we needed some more robust ones, because some of these get run over by forklifts.
Well, I have this picture in my mind of a scan gun, and it's it got the big pistol grip and everything like that on it. But I imagine it doesn't have to be. It could be just shaped like a cell phone, and you're just tapping a screen.
So
Yeah, I
they're
was like
probably
the pistol grip ones more. They're easier to use. And so even on the ones that look more like a cell phone, the companies will send a pistol grip option for it.
Okay.
So it's a lot easier, more ergonomic to use.
I'd want one shaped like one of those old NES duck hunt pistols.
I think I would prefer more of a classic Star Trek phaser. I think
Ooh.
that could be cool. Or one of my favorites, the Stormtrooper rifles from Star
Yeah,
Wars.
yeah, but if you use one of those, you're not going to actually hit the barcode.
That's true. I didn't think about that. Damn it. All right.
See, I would have to go with the Doctor Who version, the electronic screwdriver.
But then it would be bigger on the
Nice.
inside than it was on the outside, which I still have problems, wrapping my brain around that, but whatever.
It's just in a fourth dimensional direction.
Well, this has been like really awesome, this walkthrough on steel manufacturing and how you guys are leveraging wireless in general and some of the trials and tribulations. Uh, that's pretty impressive. I always like learning about new sites. Like I always say, I do a ton of work in pulp and paper, and some others, but metal and steel manufacturing I find fascinating. And I've done some work at some zinc zinc ore processing, which was really cool and probably one of my favorite projects as I look back on things. But I appreciate the walkthrough. So, a couple other things I wanted to talk about. Jeremy, our the Industrial Wi-Fi Shop's very own Jeremy Baker has submitted for a talk at this upcoming WLPC. So during the voting process, everybody make sure you vote for Jeremy so he gets voted in there. So he has to get up in front of everybody and be really nervous and sweat a lot and talk about some of his favorite stuff.
Yeah, that would be fun. And yeah, so that's kind of I was talking about that earlier, but it's about kind of non-traditional RF survey methods in like machine cells or overhead cranes and AGVs and forklifts too. That's a good way to ruin a MacBook is sit it tethered to a client on the back of a forklift, and then the guy hops off the forklift and back on and crushes your screen.
But you wouldn't know anything about that, would you?
No, I definitely didn't do that.
Yeah, that didn't happen to Jeremy at all. And then
And
what
then
else you're going to be talking about?
so then another thing I have in the notes is I just kind of asked around, and I'd gotten one of those site survey batteries from, well, a couple of different problems kind of popped up, but I'd gotten one of those site survey batteries from Exceltex, and one version of the Siemens client and APs uses an M12 to decoded or M12 to RJ45 decoded cable. And the way that the pinout works on the RJ45 connector, it only pulls from the negative. So there's no positive connection. So you don't get the PoE circuit. So and then also the Siemens Wi-Fi 6, the cabinet version, is not able to take PoE at all. So I was looking for something to kind of basically be able to use that as like a AP on a stick device, because we use those a lot for the signal recorder feature. And it's an IP cam. It's just like a little, kind of a little like 1 by 2 by 3 box, and it'll split the power off to DC. So I was able to, it's got the smarts in it. I was able to power that PoE radio off that battery with that, and then also power my Wi-Fi 6 device. So that's been pretty cool.
So you've labbed that up. Have you actually gone out to site and tried it yet?
No, they just came in like a couple days ago. So, but I will be in 2 weeks.
That's cool. I definitely want to hear about that. Keep me posted on that. That's really interesting, and that can solve just issues in general for APOS testing in industrial environments when you're trying to
Mhm.
to test off industrial radios that don't do PoE that are only 24 volt.
Yeah,
Um,
and even putting like an IPC or Raspberry Pi on the end for like data capture too, because then sometimes you need something on the other end to kind of load test a link, aside from just, hey, I see signal, but can I actually get like video or anything across that?
that's cool. That I didn't even know that was a thing just in general to be able to split PoE off to 24 volt like that for
Yeah,
decent.
it's pretty good. I mean, I powered, I used which also Ubiquity's got these really awesome like $30 PoE plus PoE injectors. So I was able to power a couple of radios off one of these things, which was pretty cool.
So in our venture for newer technologies, we got a couple of radios from R3 to start looking into those because they're interesting because they use a token ring protocol for low latency machine to machine communication, and they take those M12 connections, the D coded. What I've used in the past for M12s were X coded, so they'd pass PoE, and that was actually for fluid mesh radios before they became curves. But they run on the X coded ones, which well, like you were saying, that's what will pass PoE. But these R3s seem pretty cool. I'm interested in digging more and learning about their Echo Ring for that. I think that's kind of a interesting technology. And then, so, something else that we were talking about was Wi-Fi Halo. I've got to spend some time and develop a couple Halo Pies or something, because that's the running that stuff over 900 megahertz. That's really interesting to me, and I gotta get that figured out. Because I don't know of anybody out there who makes industrial Halo devices, so it's kind
Yeah.
of hard to try to get lab gear like that without having to build something on your own.
And
But
that stuff's probably going to have to go in some sort of like in it for now, at least like some sort of an enclosure to kind of heat shield it a little.
I would imagine.
I got a good place you can test that if you want.
Nice.
Um, what else we got going on, Jeremy?
Well, so one of the things I have is, and this is very informal. This is, and I'm by no means an expert, but kind of let's harken back to we're talking about like the Slack groups and the YCO and WLPC, but I'm always curious about what kind of documentation people do for things because I'll build, sometimes like the planners don't have the ability to do multi-radio units or things like that. So I was planning on doing like an informal, and I want to be clear, an NDA friendly, don't get anybody in trouble, but like a documentation roundtable. And so, just taking like an hour, like a lunch and learn kind of thing, and just anybody that, what kind of stuff do you deliver for documentation? What do you provide as an as built, or what do you provide for network documentation? Because in the industrial environment, you walk in and a lot of times there is zero documentation, and I mean even like different vendors require different things. So just kind of I'd like to learn more and kind of use that community resource. So I'll be posting it on LinkedIn, or you can reach out. You can pester Scott and I'll get him to hand that information over to me through the Industrial Wi-Fi Shop website. But yeah, so that's it's going to be an informal, probably hour and a half on like a Monday, Tuesday, something like that. I was planning on the 15th, but of this month, but I've got some unexpected travel that came up, so I'm probably going to push it towards the end of the month.
That sounds awesome. Heath, what do you guys do for documentation out there? Do you just pull raw reports off Ekahau, or do you like do your own specialized custom reporting?
A little bit of both, depending on the situation. Being that the documentation is only really seen by the IT groups, we don't do the best job at it. So that's why I'm looking forward to Jeremy's roundtables, because I need to learn better and get tips and tricks from other people that are better at it than myself. So we mainly do internal reports on our systems and how they're operating and how they're set up and all, but we don't get asked for reports because our customers are the people that are running the equipment and they just want to know that it works or it doesn't work.
Gotcha.
You got anything, Scott? What you got going on?
Well, I got I've got a pile of radios from Phoenix Contact, and I've got a pile of radios from ProSoft, and I'm slowly, as I have time, I'm trying to develop a curriculum for like a 1 or 2 day industrial wireless course that you could come in for, learn, and it's mainly geared towards those in the realm of OTs, but it could be anybody who wanted to attend. You would come in, you would learn some basics of wireless in general, of RF in general, and then learn the ins and outs of all the basics of connecting up and configuring industrial access points, and understanding how wireless relates in the industrial universe versus uh, out there in the wilds of enterprise, and the different goals of that communication, be it machine to machine, machine to end user device information, or just standard, Wi-Fi. So I'm starting to put together slowly but surely those kind of pieces, because eventually I would like to put out there a 2 day course that someone could register for, come to site and attend, because it would all be hands on, from all the physical aspect of wiring up and mounting all these pieces of equipment to some DIN rail, understanding how that works, the configuration process, and a lot of the different modes that are involved on these radios, because it's not your standard Wi-Fi, right? Typically these radios have multiple functions that they can do, And that, I say that about Phoenix and ProSoft just because those are the ones I'm most familiar with. But I know a lot of Siemens radios have multiple functions that they can fulfill. Moxa radios, there's a lot of functions that they can fulfill. But if you're not aware of these different things that industrial radios can do, how are you supposed to be able to appropriately deploy them out in the field? How are you supposed to make an educated decision on what you want to standardize on when you're trying to choose from vendors who are just throwing all kinds of documentation at you and sales speak? So, what I'm talking about. And the hype of different things, how you can kind of cut through that and understand what your needs are. So you know what industrial radios you need to choose for the application that you've got going on. So there's kind of a lot to that, and I don't quite know how I'm going to work all that out yet, but I figure if I can at least get the lab portion down, all the other blocks will start falling into place.
Nice.
What about you, Heath? Any other crazy stuff you've got in the works other than the rather huge transition over to Juniper Mist?
Yeah, that's the biggest thing right now. The rest of our projects have been more on the wired side of things that we've gotten finished with, updating switches that were way too old at all of our locations. So now we're updating the wireless that is way too old at all of our locations. And I cannot wait. I'm so excited about it. New technology. Oh, it's so much better. It's easier to use. It works well for them. We can get more data out of it. It's a beautiful thing.
Well, before we head off into the sunset today, Heath, where can you be found out there in the universe?
I can be found on LinkedIn under Heath Weeks. I don't do much on there yet. Trying to get into that more. I can be hit on the Wi-Fi Pros Slack. I check that often because it is a wealth of information. And then hopefully you can catch me at WLPC wearing a Jeremy Baker fan club shirt because he's going to be giving a presentation.
Fingers crossed.
Hey,
That's awesome.
if you get approved to do a presentation, I will make a Jeremy Baker fan club shirt.
Just remember, pictures or it didn't happen.
Yeah, well, there will be.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah, I'm trying to figure out like what I want my opening line to be, and I'm trying to think of that what is it? That Shakespeare friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears. But
that would be awesome.
But I gotta figure out the Wi-Fi phrasing for it.
Awesome. Well, guys, thanks again for another great show. One more time, I want to congratulate the winners of our CWISA Guide giveaways, Jace and Hiten. Again, I'll be getting a hold of you guys. I have your email addresses. And have a great day, guys. Thanks for hanging out.
Thanks for having me on your podcast. This has been a blast talking to you guys.
Well, my pleasure. And maybe towards the end of this season, we'll do a big roundtable blowout and bring everybody back. How much fun would that be, right?
Oh, that'd be fun.
Yeah, we do have to find out about how that transition goes when you go over to Juniper.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And if you're ever in my area of the U.S., come on by. Just try not to do it in the middle of summer because I don't want you to completely melt.
Will save me one of those popsicles.
Yeah. Yes.
All about the squinchers. All right, guys. Have a wonderful day, and thanks again for tuning in to another episode of the Industrial Wi-Fi Shop. Thanks for listening, everybody, and we hope you join us on our next episode of the Industrial Wi-Fi Shop.